Thanks be to God.
For the past 2 weeks, the sermons have been about covenants, and this has got me wondering, what is a covenant? It seems to be exactly like a contract. Both a covenant and a contract are agreements between two people. They have lots of similarities, yet they both are very different. It was very difficult for me to find these differences, but I tried my hardest, and through lots of conversations with my parents and debating in my mind with myself, I have come to a pretty loose conclusion that the difference between a contract and a covenant is that a covenant is an agreement that has a main goal that both sides work toward together, and that while a covenant can end, it doesn't have to. While a contract is an agreement that a contract is an agreement that has very specific points that are articulated that if you do not follow, the contract ends. A covenant doesn't always have to be between two groups of people or between two people. It can be a covenant with yourself because a covenant is more like a pledge. A contract, on the other hand, has to be between two people or two groups of people. I've made many covenants in my life, and I'm sure that everyone in this room and everyone watching this live stream has also made too many covenants in their lifetime to count. All the way from big covenants that you can have, like buying a house or committing to do all of your schoolwork and try your hardest on assignments, or to the very small covenants like doing your chores so your parents don't have to do everything, or supporting your best friend at their sports competition. Usually in a covenant, there's a goal, but that goal doesn't have to be the end of the covenant. For example, marriage has a goal of a healthy, happy marriage between two people that love each other. Even if you succeed at that goal and have a healthy, happy marriage, you still need to maintain that type of marriage for as long as you can to be with the person you love for as long as possible. That is only one of the many covenants that you can have a goal, but reaching that goal doesn't mean that you end the covenant. Lent is currently happening. This is a huge example of having a covenant with yourself. You give up something that you would usually use in your everyday life, or you add something to your life that you usually would not do or use. Mainly, this benefits you. You can easily break that covenant with yourself, but it doesn't feel like you've accomplished anything if you do. One example of a covenant would be dance choreographies. You may not know this, but I am an Irish dancer. I've been dancing for about 6 years. Those 6 years of dance, I've been in many choreographies. A choreography is a coordinated dance done by many people, meaning that this has to be a team effort to create the piece, to make the piece and make it look good. A few years ago, I went to a huge competition with my dance team. 3 of the 4 dancers were working so hard every class so that we could do well in the competition. The 4th dancer didn't seem to see the importance of the effort that needed to be put into this covenant, so they didn't work as hard. Since there was one person that didn't follow through with their side of the covenant, we ended up placing pretty poorly. We were all super bummed. This was an example of working the bare minimum versus working as hard as you can. Even though there was only one person that did the bare minimum, it affected the whole group. This example ties into being a Christian as well. In the church, there are many people that come to the services every week and are pretty involved. And then there are the people that not only come to the services and are pretty involved in church activities, they are also following what God has taught them throughout the week and doing their everyday life. The first one's not exactly the bare minimum because they are at least trying and coming to church every week. But the second group of people are the type of people that are working their hardest to benefit themselves and others by using the lessons and teachings from God and Jesus in their everyday life. And this is part of our covenant to God. Even though it might be difficult, this relationship and covenant with God is something we should totally strive for. Another example of a covenant with a group of people is a family covenant. Here you have the children and the teens of the family that need to do chores or help make dinner. This is a spoken covenant that if it is not held, then all of the weight and responsibilities fall onto one or two people, which would be a lot of responsibility. This is one reason that it's important to follow through with your side of the covenant. With my dance example, it just disappointed others. But with this example, it affects how much work others have to do and how much stress they may have. My covenant with God is probably very different from your covenant with God. But when we talk about our overall covenant with God, some big parts of that are praying. Whether you are praying for forgiveness or for not holding your side of the covenant up, or you are praying to ask questions that you'd like to get answered, answering your prayers and forgiving is God's part of the covenant. You are supposed to be good to people and follow what God has taught you in return. God is supposed to watch over you and try to grant as many of your big wishes as possible. One thing that is on our side that we tend to not really do is praying to God in thankfulness. You may pray all the time, but is it all questions and asking God for favors? Remember to strengthen your side of the covenant you hold with God. Thank God for all that God has done for you. Remember one thing, you may be scared to create a huge covenant with someone, a human, because they may mess up or fail to hold their side of the covenant and put all of that pressure on you. Remember that God is not human though, and that God will never break God's part of the covenant. God may do something unexpected, but that may just be part of God's plan for you. Since God won't break God's side of the covenant, you should work your hardest to not break yours. This is a fable story that I found that relates to covenants and can have an example with God. A boy and a girl were playing together. The boy had a collection of marbles. The girl had some sweets with her. The boy told the girl that he will give her all of his marbles in exchange for all of her sweets. The girl agreed, and the boy kept the biggest and most beautiful marble aside and gave the rest to the girl. The girl gave him all of her sweets as she had promised. That night, the girl slept peacefully. But the boy couldn't sleep as he kept wondering if the girl had hidden some sweets from him the way he had hidden his best marble. The moral of the story would be that if you don't give your 100% in a relationship, you'll always be doubting if the other person has given their full 100% as well. Give your 100% to everything you do and get peace of mind. This relates to a relationship with God because you know that God always gives 100%. So make sure that you are also giving 100% back in return. As you leave the church service today, or get off your TV or phone from watching the live stream, think, what are some of the covenants that you can work harder to strengthen? That